There is a specific kind of exhaustion that you carry. It is not the tiredness of the body, born of labor or movement. No, this weight is far heavier. It is the exhaustion of performance. Consider your daily ritual. You wake up. You put on the clothes that society expects. You calibrate your smile. You rehearse the small talk. You step out into the world and you play the character that has been assigned to you. The competent employee, the dutiful student, the agreeable friend. You navigate the noise, you nod at the right times, you laugh at jokes that aren't funny, and you offer opinions that aren't entirely yours. You are fluid. You are functional. To the outside observer, you are perfectly fine. But then, you come home. The door closes. The lock clicks. And in that precise second, something collapses inside you. The mask falls away, heavy and suffocating, clattering to the floor. And you are left with what? You find yourself sitting in the semi-darkness, perhaps illuminated only by the blue light of a screen. You engage in a habit you rarely admit to anyone. You watch. You scroll through the lives of others, through debates, through art, through chaos. You are a lurker. You consume, but you do not interact. You rarely comment. You almost never post. You leave no digital footprint. To the algorithm, you are a ghost. You tell yourself this silence is just a preference, but deep down, you feel it is something else. You feel a profound disconnection, a sense that the person interacting with the world out there is an imposter, a hollow shell constructed to survive the social market. And the person sitting here, in the dark? This person feels real, yet utterly invisible, powerless, stuck in a state of suspended animation. You are suffering from the agony of fragmentation. You look at yourself in the mirror and you see a stranger. You feel like an observer in your own life, watching a movie where you are supposed to be the protagonist, but you have somehow been demoted to an extra. You wonder why everything feels so grey. Why the achievements that should make you happy feel like they belong to someone else. Why you feel a phantom limb pain for a life you haven't lived yet. You are not depressed. You are not broken. You are not socially inept. What you are experiencing is the friction of the soul. It is the desperate, screaming plea of your unconscious mind demanding to be heard. In the realm of analytical psychology, this painful split, this war between the mask you wear and the truth you hide, is not a pathology. It is a summon. It is the beginning of the most important journey a human being can undertake. Carl Jung called it individuation. It is the path back to the true self. But be warned, the path does not lead up into the light, at least not at first. To find the person you were meant to be, we must first descend into the shadows you have spent a lifetime avoiding. But before we can walk this path, we must first address the shame. I know the narrative you have been fed. We live in a culture that worships the extrovert ideal, a world that equates visibility with value. If you are not posting, you do not exist. If you are not shouting your opinion, you are irrelevant. If you are alone, you must be lonely. Society looks at your silence and calls it a defect. They call it social anxiety. They call it withdrawal. They diagnose your preference for solitude as a failure to adapt. But they are wrong, and deep down, you know they are wrong. Let us reframe your reality. What if your refusal to participate in the digital circus is not an inability, but a refusal? What if your silence is not a sign of emptiness, but a sign of depth? You are not hiding. You are practicing what we might call digital asceticism. Think about the sheer noise of the modern world, the constant signaling of virtue, the performative happiness, the desperate need for validation from strangers. It is a shallow, frantic game. By stepping back, by becoming a lurker, you are not failing the game. You have simply transcended it. You observe because you possess a high degree of sensitivity. You understand, instinctively, that to pour yourself out into the world constantly is to dilute your essence. You feel the drain of energy that comes from maintaining that social mask, and your withdrawal is an act of self-preservation. It is the immune system of your soul kicking in to protect you from a virus of artificiality. This is the theory of mind at work. You see through the facades of others, and because you see the performance, you cannot bear to perform it yourself. That is not weakness, that is lucidity. In the alchemy of the psyche, the container must be sealed for the transformation to occur. If the vessel is open, if you are constantly leaking your energy into social media, comments, and small talk, the pressure required for individuation can never build. So, do not apologize for your closed door. Do not feel guilty for the messages you haven't replied to. Do not shame yourself for the weekend spent in solitude. You are not isolating yourself from the world. You are incubating yourself against it. You are preparing for a metamorphosis that the noisy crowd will never understand. But this incubation comes at a cost. To birth the true self, the old self must die. And this brings us to the most difficult part of the journey, the darkness. To understand why you feel this way, we must leave the modern world behind and turn to the maps drawn by the cartographer of the soul, Carl Jung. Jung proposed a terrifyingly simple idea. You are not who you think you are. The you that you identify with, the person who goes to work, who speaks to friends, who tries to be good, is merely the persona. The persona is a mask. It is a necessary tool, a social skin we grow in childhood to survive. We learn very early on that certain parts of us are acceptable and others are not. So we curate. We edit ourselves. We amplify our obedience and we suppress our aggression. We show our smiles and we hide our envy. We build a character that we think the world wants. And for the first half of your life, this works. The mask protects you. It helps you navigate the hierarchy. But here is the hidden variable that no one told you about. The shadow. When you suppress a part of yourself, your anger, your selfishness, your bizarre creativity, your raw desire, it does not disappear. You cannot amputate a part of your soul. You can only banish it to the basement. Jung warned us, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. For years, while you were polishing your persona, your shadow was growing in the dark. It has been feeding on your repressed energy, and now Now the mask has become too heavy to wear. The exhaustion you feel, that lurker fatigue, is the energy cost of keeping the dungeon door closed. You are tired because you are fighting a civil war against yourself 24 hours a day. Let the concept of civil war sink in. This brings us to the precise coordinate of your suffering. You are not just sad, you are in the nigredo. In ancient alchemy, before base metal could be turned into gold, it had to undergo a process called nigredo, or the blackening. It is the stage of decomposition. It is the burning away of impurities. It feels like death. It feels like the total collapse of meaning. This is where you are right now. You look at your life and you feel nothing but ash. The things that used to bring you joy now feel empty. The goals you chased seem pointless. You feel a loss of soul. Modern psychiatry might call this clinical depression and hand you a prescription. And while chemistry has its place, from a Jungian perspective, this diagnosis is incomplete. They are trying to fix the symptom, but they are ignoring the cause. The nigredo is not a mistake. It is a requirement. Your psyche is deliberately dismantling your persona because it has become a prison. You are breaking down because the person you were is too small for the person you are becoming. The depression is not an intruder. It is a demolition crew sent by the self to tear down a house that can no longer shelter you. Let us look deeper into the past to absolve you of the guilt you carry today. Why did you build such a heavy mask in the first place? Perhaps you grew up in an environment where your authentic self was dangerous. Maybe you had a parent who was emotionally volatile, and you learned to be invisible to stay safe. Maybe you were the good child who carried the family's expectations, sacrificing your own needs to maintain the peace. You learned to dissociate. You learned that to be loved, you had to be someone else. This was a brilliant survival strategy for a child, but you are not a child anymore. The war is over, yet you are still wearing the armor. And this armor, once your protector, is now your suffocator. So, what is the solution? How do we move from the blackening to the gold? The answer is integration. You must stop running from the shadow. You must turn around and shake hands with the monster. This is what individuation asks of you. It asks you to reclaim the parts of yourself you threw away. It asks you to acknowledge your capacity for malevolence, your hidden resentments, your unpolished dreams. If you are a nice guy who is secretly bitter, individuation demands that you integrate your aggression, not to become a villain, but to become formidable. If you are a logical intellectual who ignores emotion, individuation demands that you integrate your chaotic feelings, not to become irrational, but to become whole. This process is terrifying. It requires the courage of a warrior. As Jung wrote, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." You are currently in the hell of your own making. But this hell is fertile ground. By withdrawing from the world, by becoming a lurker, you have instinctively entered the cocoon. You are stripping away the external validation. You are sitting in the dark. Good. Stay there. Do not rush to fix yourself. Do not rush to put the mask back on. Let the fire burn. Let the false identity disintegrate. growing pain of the true self breaking through the concrete of your ego. It is a sign of life. The Stoics tell us, amor fati, love your fate, love this darkness, because it is only in the total absence of light that you can finally see the stars of your own soul. You are not falling apart, you are falling into place. But this journey is too heavy to walk entirely alone. Even the hermit needs a signal fire to know he is not the only one in the vast wilderness. You have walked in the shadows for a long time. You have carried the weight of your mask in silence, believing that your struggle was yours alone. But look around you. This channel is not just a collection of videos, it is a sanctuary, a quiet corner of the internet where the masks are allowed to fall. I want you to do something difficult today. I want you to break your silence. Head down to the comments section. Do not think of it as a public forum, but as a collective confessional. I invite you to share, what is the shadow you have been hiding? What is the part of yourself you have been afraid to integrate? You do not need to use your real name. You do not need to be perfect. Just be true. By writing it down, you drag the monster out of the dark and into the light, where it can no longer hurt you. You are not broken. You are simply in the fire. And I will see you when you emerge from the ashes.